internet.
We will work with various representatives within the community as we move forward, getting ready to finalize which direction which path we should take. And so we want to provide a high quality instruction in the safest learning environment possible for not just our students, but with all staff and community members.
That's where we could be seen. This slide simply shows the things that we have to take into consideration specifically as a school division that are applicable to the Phase 3 guidance. So, such as gathering limits, so there's a 250 maximum individuals in any area, so avoiding congregate areas such as the cafeteria will be something that we need to take into consideration. Physical distancing being, one of the big things, so 6 feet of physical distancing is what's recommended unless face coverings are in place, and 6 feet of physical distancing as long as, to the greatest extent possible. That definitely impacts the number of students that we can fit in any given place, whether it is on our school buses or in our classrooms. So that's something we have to keep in consideration. Recess is another one of those congregate areas. And for outdoor physical activities, then you look more to 10 feet physical distancing requirement there. So the number of students, sending 100 kids out at the same time to a playground is definitely not something that we'll be able to do. We'll have to consider how we're going to structure kids' days around that. Health screenings, they will be conducted every day before students, staff, and visitors enter the school building. Temperatures will be taken with non-contact thermometers, and there will be the screening questions that will be used. And then the question of face covering. So when that 6 foot physical distancing cannot be maintained, then definitely face coverings need to be worn. So the considerations are by staff, by students, by visitors, all the time. Those are all pieces of the guidance that we'll have to consider as we determine what option to use for reopening.
And so also within our, the guidance that we have followed would be from not just the CDC and the Virginia Department of Education, but also Virginia Department of Health guidelines. And so also at this point in time, I would like to bring Dr. Green in as to present as part of what we need to consider as educators and board members as we decide which direction we need to go. Dr. Green?
Yeah, thank you. I'm here. Are you able to hear me?
Hang on one second. The audio is coming through the computer, not everything else.
Okay, I'm using my phone for audio. If you like, I can try and use the computer, but it's usually poor quality. Does that come through any better?
Turn yours off. Okay, try it again.
How about now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. All right. If you can, go ahead. I'm going to try. Do you have a screen where I can share some slides?
He's asking about slides. I can see slides.
Oh, I thought you were going to present your slide from your side.
I am. That's the idea.
Okay, yeah, no, I have not.
You'll need to click on present now at the
Yeah,
bottom.
present now on the bottom right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And do you have a title slide?
Yes, sir.
Do you see any slides at all?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Oh, hang on one second. Okay, yeah, no slides yet. Try it again.
So no slide?
Still no slides.
You need to click present now at the bottom.
All right, let me try again. Yeah, I've already done that,
Okay.
and it gave me a choice of which screen to show. Do you see anything on the screen?
No, we just see you.
You see me? Okay. Well, isn't that interesting? All right, I'm gonna click stop share. And it's not even letting me present now anymore, it's grayed out.
How about I just go ahead and pull the slides up that you shared with me?
And that'd be great, if you can do that.
Yes, so what's the final slide? Okay, I think we're ready.
All right, so you have a slide that says Warren County Board of Education on the front?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I'll forget to doing what it is. No, I'm going to talk to you. So if you advance the slide,
Yes,
it should say, points to keep in mind natural forest. Do you have that?
yes, I have that.
Okay. So since we're having trouble, I'm gonna just use slides. So COVID-19, and you're probably aware, it's very much a disease of proximity. So the closer you are to another person, and the more frequent the number of contacts, the more likely there is to be a spread. So the disease is spread from moist droplets from someone's mouth or nose who's got the virus, and they're inhaled by contact or from a contaminated surface, and then someone touches their mouth or nose. And again, the spread increases with the closeness of the contact and the frequency of contact. So when you have a situation where there are a lot of people that are close together that aren't wearing masks, all it takes is one or two of them to be infected to share this disease a lot, which is something we probably saw with some of the young folks down at the beach recently. So it's a disease of proximity. The second important point is this disease is deadly to the elderly. And specifically, it's worth keeping in mind that we've had 82 deaths from COVID in this district since this pandemic began. And of those 82, 45 of them were over the age of 80. And only 5 were under the age of 60, and none of them were under the age of 30. So this disease is deadly to the elderly. It is not really a threat to children. And that's something that at least as far as we know, in 4 months of time, and that's something to keep in mind when we're talking about what we're doing with the school, is understand where the threats are. The next thing that's important to know is you can spread COVID without realizing you have it. Somebody that gets sick is contagious about 2 days before the symptoms start. So you can feel fine and be spreading this. This is one of the reasons we ask everybody to wear a mask. And then this is key, that the source of every new infection comes out of somebody's mouth or nose. And you probably know where I'm going with that. If you can advance the slide, you should have a slide of some guy sneezing.
Yes, sir.
Okay? All right, so that's who you don't want to be, and you don't want to be anywhere near him. And you can figure that the farther away you are from that cloud he just spewed, the better. But it'd be better if he hadn't spewed it at all. Next slide, please. So the next slide is a graphic of the death rate in the district by age, which again, you can see that this is very much a disease of the very old. And for people under 60, there's a very small risk of death or a bad outcome unless you have chronic disease, if you have diabetes or a significant heart disease or kidney disease, for example. And for people that are less than 30, there have been no deaths in the district. And if you look at the statewide data, on the next slide, you can see that even across the Commonwealth, nobody under the age of 20 has died from this disease. So I just got kicked off of your computer program. I'm just going to continue talking on the phone and ask you to advance the slides.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. We still.
Okay. So again, Virginia death rate by age, nobody under the age of 20. So again, this is, internalize that, please, as we have this discussion. I've heard people say, we need to keep the schools closed for the sake of the children. They're kidding themselves. That's not a true statement. It's not the children we're projecting from COVID-19. It's the elderly staff who might die from it, and then the people that the children might take it home to that are really at risk. The threat to the children is obviously interfering with their education, and there are many people in the room more expert than I on that topic. So the next slide, this says prevention. And again, these are just some points to keep in mind. So masking, remember every new infection comes from someone's mouth or nose, so let's just cover everybody's mouth and nose. Even the cloth mask, when someone sneezes or coughs or talks too loud or spews moist droplets out, most of them get caught by the capillary action in the fabric, and they don't go anywhere. So that's the one reason I want people to wear masks. Second is distancing. As the droplets expand out from the person, they disperse, and beyond a certain point, they disperse to the point where there's not enough to infect somebody else, or they dry out, they desiccate. So farther is better. 6 feet is recommended. That's not it's not an absolute boundary by any means. 6 feet is better than 3 feet. 10 feet is better than 6 feet. Outside's more effective than inside because you've got the entire atmosphere for the droplets to disperse into instead of just one room. And then masking and distancing together work better than either one alone. Now I know the guidelines from the state government say wear a mask if you can't distance. I would say if you can do it, wear a mask anytime you're inside together, whether you're distanced or not. Because being 6 foot and 1 inch does not guarantee you're not going to get sick. And honestly, if there is an outbreak and everybody is masked in the room, we're going to be a lot less concerned about disease spread than if everybody's unmasked. So to the extent you can do that when you're indoors, it's helpful. Also, if you're outdoors and you're around a crowd that's kind of close together, again, masking makes sense. Hygiene, hand washing, hand sanitizer, avoid touching your face, that all goes without saying, as does sanitation. And you talked about screening for symptoms, screening for fever. The ideal time would be at home before they get on the bus so they can just stay home. But the practical thing is probably you're going to be screening them at the door of the school. And then you have to have a plan for what you're going to do with someone who screens positive, obviously. And that'll vary from school to school. Next, please. So again, here's the guy spraying his nastiness out in the air. And if you go to the next slide, we're going to cover his face with a mask. And one next slide, the cloud goes away. And that's why people need to wear masks. Because this guy didn't know he had the COVID when he sneezed, and all the COVID germs are now kind of bound up in the fabric in his mask, and whatever got through it is very limited. Next slide, another point to keep in mind, these are post-exposure. And there's two things that are easily confused, that's quarantine and isolation. And in a nutshell, quarantine is for somebody who is well, but has been exposed. So that's somebody who is not sick, but has been exposed, reasonably exposed to someone who is sick. And what we do is we separate that person, if we can, for the longest known incubation period for the virus, which is 14 days. So if they don't get sick in 14 days, they're not going to get sick from that exposure, and they're off the hook. So that's quarantine. That's different from isolation. Isolation is for someone who's actually sick or actually has the virus. So if someone has the virus, typically, especially if it's a younger person who gets well, 10 days later, if their symptoms are going away and if they've not had any fever for a day and they're not taking any medicine to stop it, they can return to work or school. And that rule changed 2 days ago from the CDC. We used to say 72 hours without fever, but that was actually overly cautious. 24 hours is enough. So the typical healthy person is going to get over this coronavirus, and they're going to do it in 10 days. One other thing to consider is if someone's been exposed at their well and you're quarantining them, and let's say 7 days into their quarantine, they develop symptoms, they leave the quarantine category, they start in the isolation category, and their clock starts over at 0 that day. So again, quarantine is looking for infection. If you find it, you move them into isolation. If you don't find it, then after 14 days, they can return to work or school. Go ahead to the next slide, please. These are just a few things to keep in mind. So, the bad news is this virus is here to stay. There was originally some hope it might be seasonal. Well, that's not happening. It's hot and the virus is still here and it's going to town in very hot places right now. Florida, South Carolina, Texas, and so on. And we're probably not going to have a vaccine before the end of the calendar year. One or two companies who are bragging about having one out in November or even October. If that happens, you can probably yell bingo. But otherwise, I wouldn't expect one until probably New Year's Day. There are treatments being tested. There are some that shorten the course of the disease, but there's really no cure as such for this right now. So we're going to need to continue to stress all the non-medical prevention methods that we talked about, distancing, masking, and hygiene. Next, please. The good news, eventually we're going to get some more information on immunity, so we'll be able to identify people that have had this disease, have gotten over it, and are probably immune to it afterwards. We just don't have enough research information to make that statement clearly, and we don't have a test that's adequate enough that I can test your blood and say you are now immune to coronavirus. At some point, we should be to that point. And once somebody is immune to it, they really, they not only can't catch it, they can't spread it anymore either. And then treatments may turn up. There's a lot of treatments that are being tested. If we can turn up a treatment that stops people from dying, then all of a sudden this thing just becomes a bad cold, and we can all go back to school and work at that point. But we don't have any treatment like that right now. And then eventually there will be a vaccine. There are some very, very high-speed, low-drag organizations working on that vaccine, some of them I know personally. And I have every confidence there will be a vaccine developed eventually. And then we'll get together with Valley Health and we'll decide the best way to get that vaccine out to everybody that needs it, probably starting with the elderly and the people that care for them, and then everybody else. Next, please. This is just a look at the case counts in the valley over time. This is the whole district. It isn't just Warren County. And again, our first cases came along right around the beginning of April, tail end of March. The tall spikes that you see were some nursing home outbreaks that happened in various places. And then things calmed down a little bit, and we've had a little bit of a rebound in number of cases, but nothing like what we saw back in May and the beginning of June. So things are, while the virus is still with us, it's relatively under control in the district. And our main efforts are to keep it away from people who are most susceptible, and particularly the elderly. Next, please. So these are just a few special concerns, more for schools, and you've probably thought of these, but I'm just going to go ahead and go through them. Number one, you are going to have cases. You're going to turn up kids that test positive, or you're going to turn up kids with symptoms. So you need to have a plan specific for your school as to how to divert them and how to separate them from the other students and put them in either quarantine or in isolation if they're actually sick. The main risk again is not the children; it's the older staff. So the more elderly teachers and any other support staff in the school that might be above the age of 60 or 65 or might have some chronic disease and be middle-aged. You've already, I'm sure, thought about whether or not you might need to close the school again. Closing the school probably would be more a factor of not having enough staff to keep it open rather than having a lot of cases. Because again, remember that the kids themselves are not the ones at risk; it's the staff. And it's possible that you may have one person get sick and they expose 5 other people. So now you've got one person on isolation, 5 on quarantine, maybe 2 of the people on quarantine may get sick, and you're going to have a bunch of folks gone for 3 weeks. And that may interfere with your ability to conduct the various programs at school. again, something to think about. Space requirements, I'm sure you've thought through a lot of that. I know I've talked to other districts about the bus situation, where we're going to have them one child per seat with masks on and try to make that work. And then special programs, again, anything that blows air, whether it's somebody singing, or somebody talking loud like I am right now, or somebody blowing into something that might spit the virus out the other end of the horn. Those are all, potentially things that are risky, and we don't have a lot of data to show how risky. So that's something you'll need to think about. If you do have wind-based instruments, they certainly would be best outdoors, or they would be best widely separated. Obviously, drums and orchestra, string orchestra is fine. And then athletics, if you've looked at the guidelines talk about limiting the size of groups, and they talk about maintaining 10 feet of physical distancing, except for incidental contact. So if you read that literally, you pretty much ruled out most team sports on a field or a court, because there's just a lot of contact in things like football, basketball, hockey, field hockey, lacrosse, wrestling, or any martial arts. And you can maybe make an argument for soccer. You might be able to play that without too much contact. Probably could play baseball or softball. Cross country and track and field events are probably fine. Weightlifting, tennis, golf. Those are things that you can still do. But a lot of the team sports on the field, with the exception of baseball and softball, are going to be pretty difficult to not have more than just incidental contact. And I will tell you that we have one outbreak that occurred in a basketball camp for 12 and 13-year-olds, where they played regular basketball, and majority of the kids actually caught COVID, and then some of their parents have gotten it sick. So probably restricting team sports for a semester might be something you want to look at. I know I just found out Shenandoah University has canceled their team sports for the fall season. I'm not sure what the NCAA is going to do, but something to think about. And then vocational training, again, a lot of that requires hands-on, so you have to work that out, how you can do that, if you can do it at distance learning, whether you can't, how well those programs are going to work. Maybe you need to have the kids coming more often for those, up to your expertise. Next slide, please. You don't want to share classroom materials. So the old deal, I remember, of take one and pass it on with papers would not fly. Maybe you don't do that anymore because everything's electronic. But anything you might be handled by multiple kids is something you don't want to do. Everybody should have their own. Figure out what you're going to do if a child gets sick while they're in class. And then what special equipment, you've probably already got your scanner, thermometers. Your school nurse probably needs some personal protective equipment, and if he or she has not been fit tested for an N95 mask, they should be, and we can help arrange that at the health department. Have your points of contact available by phone and email for care of the sick or questions. And then obviously the kids who go home on quarantine or isolation are going to need to switch to your online mode. And then I mentioned the vulnerable ones of the elderly staff, the middle-aged staff that may have chronic disease. Consider what options you have as to keep them away from large crowds or risk of infection. Maybe those are the ones that should be doing the online teaching, for example. I don't know if someone's up for a sabbatical, or maybe they have something else they can do for a semester. Again, leave that up to you, but be creative in ways to keep people that are susceptible away from the areas of danger. And then next slide, please. Again, the summary, the way forward, COVID is going to be with us for some months to come, probably through this calendar year, probably at least the first semester. We need to go on with our lives, but avoid crowds, keep distance, wear a mask if you can't keep distance, even if you're outdoors and you're in a tight situation, have a mask on, so should everybody else. Wear it when you're indoors with others. And I wish that the politics of wearing a mask would go away. The virus doesn't care how you vote, and there's really there's really nothing admirable about refusing to wear a mask, because you're just volunteering to be a spreader of disease. Then the last thing is my least favorite phrase, I think, in the last 6 months is, quote, new normal, unquote. That is a depressing thing for people to say. I wish people would quit saying it. This is not a happy time in our history, but it is not a permanent time in our history. Eventually we'll have a vaccine. This virus will be one more thing we vaccinate people against. It will fade into memory, and our new normal will look a whole lot more like the old normal than how we're living right now. So let's think about lifting each other's spirits as well, and keeping in mind that things are going to get better as far as this virus is concerned. It's probably going to take another 6 months, but they will get better. And with that, I'll let Dr. Bellinger have the show back, and I'll stay to answer questions for a while. I do have to leave right before 6 because I promised to put this show on for Clark County Board of Education too, and I need to drive to Berryville. So with that, thank you for listening, and I'll be available for questions.
So Dr. Green, I'll open the floor, and that is just, because I know your time is limited, so if we have any questions from the board.
You want to have any questions, Dr. Green? Yeah.
You talked about oral and nasal transmission. Would an antimicrobial mouthwash for the children and staff be advisable?
Okay, I couldn't quite understand.
Nasal and oral, would an antimicrobial mouthwash be a benefit?
Yeah, no, ma'am, that won't make any difference. It'll make your breath feel better, but it won't help stop the COVID. The virus is actually inside the cells on the lining of the respiratory tract. The virus can't reproduce on its own. It has to invade and take over human cells in order to reproduce. So the virus and its particles are actually inside the cells, so a mouthwash won't get rid of it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Rinaldi, you have anything? Sir.
Just one question, Dr. Green. Face shield offer any additional shielding along with face mask?
So the question for Mr. Wells, does face shield offer any additional shielding or prevention along with face mask?
So face shields are actually designed to protect the wearer from things splashing or spraying on them. So you might wear one if you were delivering a baby, for example, or if you were engaging in some procedure that might cause something to spray. They're not all that effective at stopping droplets coming out from the person. If someone's wearing a mask, there's not a whole lot of extra advantage to wearing a face shield. Now, if somebody absolutely can't wear a mask, let's say they've got claustrophobia, for example, severe enough they can't wear a mask, a face shield would be better than nothing. And I have seen some face shields that actually come with kind of an elastic or a cloth collar around the edge, so it sort of closes things off. Because the problem with a face shield is if you sneeze, yeah, some of the droplets will end up on the shield, but some of it will blow around the edges and go out into the air. So the ones with the collar around are a little more effective. They're also pretty pricey. So a shield, while it's better than nothing, is not a replacement for a mask in this case.
Dr. Green, the board would like to thank you for your insight, your expertise, and your time to share with us this evening. I'll turn it back over to Dr. Valley.
All right, I'll stick around for a bit.
And so other considerations, as we're preparing our options, as you can see, is our physical space within the building, schedules, technology needs, and transportation and health. And so each member will discuss each topic as
Thank you, Dr. Ballinger. So one of the things when we get into the logistics, we have to think about the physical space of our buildings. And we know that with 6 feet distancing, not all 25 desks can fit into a classroom. So we're going to have to limit our classrooms to 12 to 14 desks. So what we did is we looked at each one of our schools to determine how many students we would be able to accommodate in learning spaces. So about 12 to 14, it depends on the classroom and the square foot size of the classroom. And we looked at all available spaces, which included classrooms, auxiliary gyms, libraries, cafeterias, to see what we can convert into classroom spaces and still maintain that 6 feet of distancing. We found that all of our elementary schools will be able to house pre-K through 4, and Rusty Jeffries Elementary School will actually be able to house pre-K through 5 with physical distancing in place. And where possible, we also have one-way hallways. So AS Roads is not a place where you're going to have a one-way hallway because it's just a straight hallway through the school. But at Hilda J. Barber Elementary School, there's opportunity for us to make one-way hallways there. So where it's possible, we're doing that. Where possible as well, we're increasing the outside air flow into the school so that we can have more fresh air if our HVAC units will allow us to do that. Our custodians are going to increase their cleaning, their sanitization of flat surfaces like desks and tables and doorknobs, things that are frequently touched. Our water fountains are going to be modified to be bottle fillers, and we're going to turn off the water fountain part of that so that our students aren't, tempted to take a drink out of the water fountain. Sanitizing wipes are going to be available to wipe, so students or teachers can wipe desks as they choose. And we're also, I think Ms. Rudisil mentioned this, but we're going to minimize our assemblies and our large gatherings. We're going to look at the times that our students go out for recess so that we are maintaining small groups. And then we are going to limit the mixing and changing of classes as well. So our teachers at the elementary school especially will be teaching one class and be staying with that group for most of the day. If at all, there will be 2 teachers teaching, trading between classes. So that is the physical space part of it. And then the schedules, we're still working on the schedules, but we have at this time, due to our transportation schedule, and we'll hear a little bit more from Mr. Mitchell here in a minute, but our elementary schools, we're planning like an 8 to 2 school day. And then for 3 of our elementary schools, and then 2 of our elementary schools, our middle and our high school, will be going to school from 9 to around 3:05. We are trying to maximize instructional time, but we also need to make sure that we comply with contraction times for our staff, and then we also need to make sure that we align with bus schedules and are able to do that. So be happy to answer any questions about the physical space or the schedules. And then we'll turn it over to Mr. Grant.
So,
Yes.
with respect to cleaning, we just created a contract with Sodexo. Does that allow for us to add, obviously it's going to cost us, does that allow us to ask for more, maybe more staff, or more frequent cleanings?
It does, and we're also, I meet with Sodexo tomorrow, talking about this topic, but we're going to increase the daytime staff. We're going to have more people there during the daytime and less, or, flexible hours and then less there in the evening. We are also looking at one of the options that will be presented is looking at a day for heat sanitization for all of our schools, so that's another opportunity. And we are looking at sanitization machines, which will actually, this is a sprayer that goes through and quickly sanitizes areas. So, yes, the answer is yes.
Ms. Shepherd, I know Sodexo had discussed in the past that they had some way they were cleaning the schools and it helped with the common fluid. Will they incorporate that
Yes.
into our schools?
Yeah, that is one of the, I think in a future slide, you're gonna see some increased cost, and that's gonna be one of the, because we wanna have more of those machines, so it's, so we can get to more areas in an evening or a night, so,
Thank you.
yeah. All right, thank you. Mr. Grant?
You're welcome.
Thank you. For our technology needs, we'll start with the student devices. So every student will have a device. It will be age appropriate. Preschool, kindergarten will have a touchscreen Chrome device. And then the upper grades will have a regular Chromebook with the keyboard. All of these devices, again, will have access to programs that are age appropriate. There will be filtering, internet filtering, both at home and in school for all of these devices. And so also, just looking at applications, things like that. For example, email. You're not going to have email for kindergarten, but you may have email in a certain, just enough for the teacher to get a hold of the students, but not open to the outside for 5th grade and maybe middle school, and then high school will have monitored, access to email where it would be able to reach out to, out to each other and out to the outside world. But we also have filters that keep, keep things from coming in that are inappropriate. So with that, there's also LMS. We'll have LMSs. LMS is a learning management system. What that is it allows for teachers to organize the learning content for the students in an appropriate way, so that they can keep track of their learning, and if they need to go back, they can do that. And then, again, that will be age appropriate. We'll do Virtual Virginia for grades 6 through 12. And then for the younger grades will be Schoology. And Seesaw for kindergarten and preschool. And then wireless internet connection. So not everybody has wireless or has internet at home. So we're going to try to help those that do. Some don't have appropriate wireless. And depending on where you live and what your area is like, it's going to be different answers with different solutions for everyone. So we are going to send home mobile hotspots if that's appropriate for your area, if that works. If not, we will try to work with the community to add areas like parking lots where we can put an extended range Wi-Fi that can pick up a cell signal and then give those people in that parking lot internet access. So that covers both internet connections and local community internet connections. Do you have any questions?
Do we know approximately how many students we have who do not have access to Wi-Fi?
Access at all is only 4%, I believe.
Yeah.
But appropriate access is more like 15%.
Have we reached out to maybe the county or to?
Yes, we're.
I know that's been a project for several years, is to try to reach those areas of the county that do not have access.
Yes, we do. There is a plan with the county to work with the service providers to put better, more high-speed internet access. So you may have internet access out where you live, but you may have only a certain amount of speed. Some places will only use 6 to 10 megabits, but you may really need 15, 20 to stream videos, and especially if you have multiple people in your family that are doing this at the same time. So we're looking at not just internet access, but high-speed internet access. Any other questions?
Mr. Grant,
Yes.
when they have a Chromebook, and
Yes.
say their internet's not really up to speed, as you say, high speed.
Right.
Can the teacher download while
Yes.
the child's at school?
Yes.
And then they go home and do whatever they were downloading?
Yes.
And then once they connected the Wi-Fi again, will it
It
transmit
shoots back out, yes, that's
Okay.
exactly. There's a little option in Chrome. It's called Work Offline. We're going to train our teachers and staff and students how to click that box, and it'll store to the Chromebook. And then when it finds a good, appropriate access or a connection, it will shoot the information back out to the teacher.
Okay, so then, if the teacher had said something to you that you didn't have access,
Right.
then once you got
Yes.
decent speed of internet, it would download to your
Yes.
laptop. Okay,
Yes.
so it goes both ways.
It goes both ways.
Okay,
Yes.
great.
It's like when you get to the school, it's kind of like a home base. You're getting all the information in, and then you can store it and take it back out.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions?
I just want to say thank you for the past few years pushing the Chromebooks one-on-one. I tell you what, it was time.
Yeah, so we had been 6 through 12 up until this year, and we had half at K through 5. So this, through this summer, we've completed that. So we've reached the goal. Thank you. Thank you. Sure.
I'd like to think it's the second best and the last. I'm going to share a few points with you, and I'm going to try to talk you through this one that I passed out. First thing is we're hedging our bets that we're going to have one student per seat and require a face mask. We are also, when we're formulating these numbers, we do have some 77 passenger buses, obviously, but we have an awful lot of older 64 passenger buses. So we're formulating off of that number. So we're basically 21.3 students per bus. That helps you understand maybe a little bit of this. What you have is one of your three options, option 1, 2, and 3, which you're going to see will correlate with Dr. Ballinger's presentation. You're going to see little blocks in red, some in yellow, and some in no colors. Basically those boxes mean that if it's in red, it's over what we're trying to perform. We're trying to perform our duties in 34 routes. That's currently what we have. That's currently what we're doing. So anything we go over that is going to require an additional resource. Now, don't get too concerned if you see a 35 or a 37. We do have those drivers, but we're sub-drivers. Our problem is we go 34, we have 6 sub-drivers. We go to 40, and somebody calls out, we're not making a run that day. So don't get too scared of that. And there's some of these numbers, again, because of how we calculated and how we formulated, we have a little bit of cushion in place. So again, those will reflect your options 1, 2, and 3. Your vertical columns here, you'll be giving you 3 scenarios. The first column on the far left, you'll see it says 80%. And so that's basically, we're thinking that we're going to see on the front end that maybe 80% of our students are riding. But we know that as we progress into our school year, that's going to increase. So what's that look like? Well, we took that to we're going to have 83% riding. And then the third column to the last on the right is going to show you what that 88% what we're looking like. And those are based on some numbers that Dr. Ballinger's come up with that we feel are realistic. Well, and again, a lot of this is moving parts. It's tough to calculate equations when you don't really have a lot of fixed variables. We took our projections, our forecast, our enrollment, our power school numbers, we calculated this stuff, and then we went back and ran it against real numbers from the past 2 years. What did it look like last year? We took those numbers, put it in this scenario, would it support it? Go back another year, we did the same. We're really coming up with about the same information, plus or minus here or there, but given the data we have right now, that's pretty confident in that. Questions?
I'm sure, Mr. Mitchell.
It only took about 10 minutes to do this. I know you were going to ask that.
That you looked at, but based on the 77 passenger school bus, I'm sure you already run those to the areas that have the most children getting on. So there's no way we could shift because you've already got them in those areas.
We already have them there, but if you'll notice, and if you'd like, I can email you, we have the supporting data for this, and it actually breaks it out by cost. And so part of it too also lets us look at, say we have that 64 passenger bus, that capacity and that route all of a sudden goes over. The cure for that isn't to reroute again. The cure is to put a 77 passenger bus in. Right. So that gives us that little bit of cushion without taking 4 or 5 different families and completely rerouting their times and the directions of their bus numbers.
What's our average percentage of parents that drop off their students or the high school children that drive? versus that ride across the truck.
That's a tough number.
I
Just
know.
round
It's
numbers,
changed.
we're 50 couple percent that ride the school bus. Steve is more like 2%, and I think we're a little bit lower because we are a bit of a bigger community. We have a lot of those driving students off. So again, these numbers kind of support that.
Work in the, okay, thank you. Anyone else? Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Dr. Ballinger, Board, Kevin. We've been talking about health all night, and everything we do is about the health and safety of our students and our staff. The topic I'm going to briefly talk about is health, but I'm not going to reiterate all the strategies that are embedded in our educational plans and all of our plans that everyone else has already talked about. Our department is working very hard on a health mitigation plan for phase 3, reopening. And that starts with a division-wide COVID task force. We have members, each principal from every school, and various community members from the Department of Health, local Department of Health, the Lord Fairfax Department of Health, the police, the sheriff, fire and rescue, and other community members are part of that task force. In addition, we've created a monitoring system where we communicate with the Department of Health every day. We have a system in place, believe it or not, it was a system in place put together way back at when H1N1 came around. We put together a system that school secretaries gather data, absentee data for all students that are absent, as well as students that are just identified with COVID symptoms or COVID-19. That data is sent to the Special Services Office daily by 1 o'clock every day. And every day, all that information will be sent to the Lord Fairfax Health District because they look at that regional approach. So that system is in place to gather that data. The data, of course, is sent to the superintendent and assistant superintendent daily. We're also creating training videos for staff and for students when in-person and in-person instruction happens. We'll have videos that are that talk about that's developmentally appropriate for kindergartners or students at a lower functioning level, as well as high school students and normal typical peers. Those videos will talk about what distancing is, what hygiene is, and all those kinds of things. There'll also be a video for staff, and the staff will help them. The nurses are working with the building principals to create that training module, which will happen before school opens. Again, I'm not going to get into all the different things that everyone else mentioned. We do have a significant amount of personal protective equipment. We have a significant number of disposable masks for people that don't have them. We have hand sanitizing machines that you're seeing right there behind you. And in the hallway, they're deployed in every school building, multiple. And we have a significant number in reserve. The maintenance department has been deploying them to our buildings. DuPont and Fire and Rescue, or Exalted and Fire and Rescue, have just donated 500 gallons of liquid hand sanitizer that works with our machines. We can't keep them in one place. Fire marshal says no. So we have 50 gallons in each building. So 50 gallons of hand sanitizer are in reserve, in addition to the gallons of hand sanitizer that we already have. We have gel, we have different types of hand sanitizer. I have my other sheet over there, but we do have 500 gallons of liquid in reserve, which is very good. We have face shields. I heard Dr. Green talking about they're not that good, but they're not as good as face coverings. However, we have a lot of students that are deaf, or a lot of students with sensory issues that really rely on facial expression. So we have face masks for our therapists, and we have face masks for our teachers with deaf and hard of hearing. So students that rely on lip reading and different kinds of facial expressions can still get their therapy and still get their education. You mind if I mention the masks that you recommend? I hate those. Dr. Bowser recommended that we get all of our staff reusable cloth masks that are adjustable, so we have to do different sizes. We have the Warren County Public Schools logo, and we're going to be distributing them to every staff member to show pride in our school system and help people safe. So every staff member will have those masks available, but they can take one home, wash it, and then that's quite exciting.
They get 2 each?
I'm sorry?
They get 2 each?
They get 2 each, and we'll have a significant number in reserve in case they get lost or broken. So we do have, as Dr. Green mentioned, we do have medical grade PPE, personal protective equipment. We do have N95 masks for all of our clinic personnel, our nurses, and the substitutes that support the clinic. Last Thursday and tomorrow, fire and rescue, we did it in this very room last Thursday, but tomorrow there's less people because we've got most of them fitted for the masks. They'll be doing the fitting at the public safety building for the remainder of the professionals getting their masks fitted. So every clinic will have gowns, face masks, fitted N95 masks, as well as other medical grade personal protective equipment. Again, quite exciting. So significant resources have been allocated. We also know students have been out since March. We also know that students are going to need, I hate to be hokey, but I am a hokey, month. And we're going to be focusing on the social emotional learning of our students quite significantly. One fragile population is the homeless population. We currently have 41 students experiencing homelessness right now in Martin County. We wrote a grant and we're lucky enough to receive significant dollars to provide social emotional learning for our homeless population. We're starting that now. We're reaching out to them and we're starting that connection to help them feel like they're part of the system. Most of the people are in the hotels and double up situations. So we have targeted them because we have resources to do it. I'll move quickly. Okay, so we are targeting, we're targeting all those health issues that we are. We do have an in-depth screening process. We're creating a health screening process that you went through when you came in. We're not going to ask every staff member those questions. Do you have a new cough that can be attributed to a health condition? Do you have new chills or new muscle aches that contributed to another health condition? We're not going to ask them. What we're going to do is we're going to have that document online and send it home to all of our families and ask our parents to partner in keeping people safe. And they're going to ask those students those checklists every day until they go to school. And if they're sick or they're experiencing those symptoms, they're going to stay home. However, we are going to take every child's temperature. We're going to do that, working with Mr. Mitchell. We're going to do that, and get them on the bus. And then we're going to do the riders, the walkers, the drop-offs, the drivers. We're going to do that before they enter school. Each school has some canopies that we purchased to put outside, protected from the elements, the weather, and we have a large number of no-touch thermometers. Each school right now has 3, and we have another 50 or so stockpile at the big range. So we'll be doing temperatures for students and staff. Mr. Smith and I have been working very diligently the last couple of days on that same kind of questionnaire for staff. Staff will ask those questions to themselves and not come in if they're sick. But when they do, come in, not sick. They'll get their temperature taken and they'll move forward. Then we have a process detailed to what, and I won't go into it because I know I'm limited amount of time, of when somebody is suspected of having COVID. And we have a detailed process in our health mitigation plan, which will be provided to the superintendent and the task force, hopefully tomorrow. We have a draft completed that'll say exactly what we do if that happens. We do, when you walk in, you notice a little sign that says the green room. That is our care room. It is not an isolation room. It is not a seclusion. It's a care room. So, and that can't be the same room as the clinic. The clinic, we still get sick. We still get the flu. We still get mice. We still get whatever. So those rooms, the clinics, will be used for everyday illness. However, we will have a care room that's set up for students that or staff that have symptoms of COVID. I think that's about it. I guess if I have to press upon one thing to all the board members, we're not making it up. We are working diligently with the health department. I contact the epidemiologist multiple times a day about different types of things. I have her on speed dial. Take some questions about health. Yes, Dr.
Do you know what percentage of teachers and staff members are in those higher risk category, age categories that,
I don't personally, but I'm sure our personnel director has a better idea than I. I don't know the
We're
answer.
actually conducting a survey right now from all staff members, so that we can collect that data. And, Ms. Smith will probably touch on that.
okay, I guess wondering for their specific PPE, if there was something additional.
Along those lines, Dr. Pence, we have identified our students that are ordered. And we are reaching out to all the families of the students that not only that maybe might that are immune compromised, but have other health conditions and healthcare plans. And we'll be working with those families and working with their doctors to make sure that they are protected with their other options for them to be able to. We've identified those students months ago, and we didn't get confused with a lot of surveys getting ready to target them.
Sir,
Yes.
we don't have nurses at every school, right?
Yes, we do.
We do have
We
one at
have,
every school.
yeah, we have an RN at every building except for a non-traditional program, which shares the nurse with AS Rose. Because that's the smallest population, and that's our lead nurse, so she shares responsibilities with diversified lines of work. But there is a registered nurse at every building.
We maybe need to take a look at that, because as the year goes on, particularly we come back full steam. We don't want to take a chance on that person coming back to school. That would be something I would at least consider. And then, Mr. Frank, the questionnaire, can that be put online?
The questionnaire for,
The morning questionnaire,
oh, yes, certainly, yes.
at least the staff, and it be on so that when you come in the morning, you record the temperature and you go through the questions and you sign in with your employee number or whatever, and then that goes to a central bank and feeds out so that we can have statistics that all of our staff were free today, all of our staff are free.
Sure, yeah, we can certainly
That
do
would
that.
be a good way to, maybe it goes to the principal once everybody is logged in. Thank you.
So as you can see, we've had a lot of areas that we were concerned with as far as when putting together our options and what school life would look like. Another area of concern is, of course, equity. And you've heard special education before, what services do we need to provide to those students that are on an IEP or 504? Then, of course, not just our students on an IEP or 504, but also our English language learners. Those students need a little bit more time to be in school. So making sure that they are given those services. And then your at-risk population. For those students that maybe internet possibilities do not work at their home. They do not have an internet provider. You cannot get cell service. So, what is the other option? Can we bring that student to school additional days to make sure that now is the 5th grade day? So they would be, as Mrs. Shepard mentioned earlier, pre-K through 5. And so in option 1, those 5th graders at all of our other elementary schools will need to be moved to the middle school because of space and limitations physical within the building. But still give those 5th grade students the opportunity of being in school 4 days a week. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Now Wednesday will be a virtual learning day for everybody in the county because we need to have that deep cleaning that needs to go on. We picked Wednesday because it also gives us an opportunity to get things going, but clean in between. And then you hit that weekend, you still have 2 days and you can do another one. So basically, we're deep cleaning twice a week. Every 2 days, we throw in a deep clean and make sure that we sanitize and to provide an environment that is safe for everybody that enters our building. When you look at option 1 with your 6th through 12th grade students, again, this is a flip model where it really relies upon But of course, then we also will focus when we have those meetings, because we know that building relationships, that's what's important as an educator. That's how learning really occurs. Building relationships with students, it's important. And so on those days, we really want to make sure that we focus also within that classroom on our social and emotional needs of our students when we have them, especially at the secondary level. And this is just a graph kind of to give you a look at what it would be within just a visual representation. And so as you look at this graph, again, you have pre-K through 5, 4 days a week, but then you have, here we have Skyline Middle Day, Skyline High School Day, so they would be, for instance, a Thursday, Friday, and then your Warren County. And a lot of that ties back to transportation. Again, when you can only see so many students on the bus, that limits the number of people that you can transport. And so when you look at transportation, you look at facilities and classroom space, it's tough in looking at getting all those students in at one time. And again, here's just the graph to explain that. So here you would have, if I was at Group A, I would show up on Monday and Tuesday. So now I get two, and, we're
And
trying
that's
to.
even with the staggered times from elementary to secondary.
Yeah, and that's why we try to stay within the 2 staggered times, just for cost reasons. So any other questions on option 1 or 2 at this time? Yeah, okay. So option 3, this is, you see this option in a lot of different school settings right now in Virginia. And this is an equity option where each student just receives 2 days. If I'm an A day, pre-K through 12, I may get Monday, Tuesday, or I may get Thursday, Friday. But every student will only receive 2 days in that month. And again, what are the drivers? Again, it's the space, it's the cost, it's transportation. So you have a lot of issues when you look at making sure that we maintain social distancing. So we want that safety, we want to make sure we're healthy. But that is option 3, just making sure that everybody receives the same. Does that hurt us at the elementary level? I mean, as a pre-K or kindergarten, and you're learning phonics, that's 2 days of having a break. It's going to be tough. There's going to be one. No matter what solution we go with, this year there's going to be rain. We're going to have it. We have to catch up from what we lost from March 13th. So we need to do the best we can, but this is an equity model that allows our students to each have the same number of days, pre-K through 12. And again, there's and then option 4, we feel that everybody wants students in the classroom. We want students in the classroom because learning occurs in the classroom. It's tough to teach a pre-K student, or you cannot do it. Kindergarten, 1st grade. So the best place for that to occur is for that student to be in that seat during the day. But we also felt that, as other divisions are choosing which direction they're going within our region, option 4 is to take and say, okay, the first semester, we're going to try to do everything the first quarter, do everything remotely, and then look at coming back in that second 9 weeks with in-person instruction. So those are the 4 options that we, as a group, and working through team meetings with with the leadership, with principals, with being out and discussing with our teachers and listening to their concerns, going through our parent surveys, going through our staff surveys. You know, we're trying to build something that we want or feel that's going to provide a good quality education for our students. And with these four options, you know, we just want to discuss kind of where we need to go and have an open dialogue so that we can start pushing this out to our parents and to our families to get input and to discuss with them which direction we need to go. But before we get to that point, we have two more sections, or two more schools that we need to discuss.
Good evening. Blue Ridge Technical Center gives us some unique challenges because of transportation and because the school is, the RTC is used by both schools. So our current plan gives us an opportunity to perhaps have even more in-person and hands-on experiences than several of our plans have for their home schools. Our current plan is to have year 2 and 3 students to attend in the morning from 8 a.m. to approximately 10 a.m. One high school will attend on Mondays and Tuesdays. The other high school would attend on Thursdays and Fridays. And again, this is for year 2 and 3 students. An important part of this plan, we're planning to ask our year 2 and 3 students to drive first to Blue Ridge Technical Center and then to their home school in time for their third period class and for lunch. Now, for students that cannot drive and some of them don't have the opportunity, they don't have a license, we are working with Mr. Mitchell to create a plan. But the largest bulk of students we've asked to drive. Wednesdays would be reserved for our year 1 students, for our 9th and 10th grade students. And of course, transportation would be provided for these students. And on Wednesdays, the students would have the opportunity to spend the majority of the day at Blue Ridge Tech Center. We don't typically ask students to drive to Blue Ridge Tech Center because, frankly, they have the opportunity to not drive back to their home school, and because there is a parking issue. But beyond that, that's all we don't ask. So, do you have questions about what our current plan is for Blue Ridge Tech Center?
We don't have the capacity for the second quarter student to go to both schools to go 4 days.
In order to, we have to split the classrooms just like we do at the high school. So, thank you, Mr. Will, that's a good point. When this is over, and I truly believe it will be over, we'll have the ability to combine those 2 classes into one again. Because, again, if it's Warren County on Monday and Tuesday, that's really just half of the class. And if it's Skyline on Thursday and Friday, it's just half of the class. But we don't have the space actually to do it and keep social distance.
Now, so Tuesday night, the box is going to be open at the school. But Wednesday, you're going to have some other different group there, and Wednesday night, you another group there.
Actually, the class is currently planned to be from 8 to 10:30. And so they would have the rest of the day. We have some other opportunities where Blue Ridge Technical Center staff could perhaps help out other places. We're really not sure, but we do know that we have the facilities, they would have the majority of the day where they could do that completely almost every day. And that would be an important part of our plan because the things that happen at the Blue Ridge Technical Center are hands-on. They're very intense, and but we can do that. The second part is a little bit easier. On July the 15th, we received an email from Dr. Williamson. She is the director of the Mountain Vista Governor School. And the current plan for Mountain Vista Governor School is for them to begin virtual instruction on August the 10th. And her In her letter, she said that she hopes to add in-person instruction in September, after Warren County and all the neighboring districts, Frederick County, everyone who participates, once they settled into their plan, and if they are back in session, then she hopes to start in September. But that is the latest we can have. Okay, thank you. Have a nice evening.
Yes, sir.
So when we look at our community survey to help in deciding our options, we looked at what our data was telling us. So when we asked the question, do you plan on utilizing transportation, 47% of the families that responded, which I believe we had around 40, somebody help me, I think it's 46 or 4,300. Is that correct? 4,300. 4,300, yes. So out of those 4,300 responses, 47% said yes. Well, 46% said no. So we know we're about an even split on the transportation, which allowed us to go from looking at multiple routes, 3 routes, possibly to get us through today, to 2 routes. And then, do you have internet? Well, yes, 95% has internet. So that 5% that does not have internet, but that's not also the question we need to answer. Even though you have internet, is it good enough? Does your download upload speed allow multiple users online in your household that you have to be online and your brother or sister has to be online? And then that jumps to 10% that does not quite have internet that is good enough to handle online learning. And so then we looked at our questions. Do you feel comfortable in sending your child back to school or not? And so this helps us by trying to look at how many students may want the full virtual option. But really, when you ask the question, I feel uncomfortable. Well, I can feel uncomfortable because I don't know your plan. So we looked at that 37% that felt uncomfortable, and we went back and had teachers within the buildings call those parents and ask an additional question. When you say you're uncomfortable, do you want virtual learning, or are you just waiting on a plan? And so out of that survey, we had,
Yep, almost 900, we surveyed almost 900 of the parents or families who said that they were uncomfortable, and 52% said they wanted full virtual, and the ones who were undecided wanted to know what the school plan was. So of that, of the 37, the number's kind of small at the top there, of the 37.3% of the parents who were uncomfortable to send their children to school, they wanted full virtual. So that equals to about 19.4% of our families would like to have full virtual.
How many students is that? About 500?
19.4% is almost 20%.
Almost 20% out of 5,300, so you're looking at almost 500,000 enlisted. 1,600.
I think it's like 1,000. 20% is about 1,000. Yeah, is that about right? Yeah. Yeah. So we're anticipating 1,000 of our families, of our children will want to do full virtual.
And those numbers were used to come up with different options for.
Which allowed
in
us,
school.
Yes.
yes ma'am, it allowed us to look at the space, and don't run off and shove it.
Okay.
It allowed us to look at the space within our buildings, and then it also allowed us to look at transportation, how many students, because taking off 1,000 or 1,500 students off of transportation, you know, that opens up Aaron's ability to move more students on those buses when it comes to limited number on being transported. So right now, he may have to run 2 routes, where typically he used to be able to do it, you know, on that one route, he could run one bus, pick them all up, and bring them. Now he's gonna have to run that twice, probably to get them. So, you know, when you look at that 18 to 20%, that really, you know, allows us to do some different things to get those elementary students in, because it opened up some of that classroom space. Now, again, we are giving our families the option that if you choose full virtual now, you know, you want to come into school, we're going to take you. You know, we're going to take you. And, you know, we're also going to give those parents the option, you're in school now, but you want to go full virtual, we'll let you go. You know, we'll work with you, do the best we can to help you have a good quality experience remotely. So,
It's a good point. Just sticking on the question I was going to ask. Whichever plan we choose, are we going to stick with it, I guess, term? Are we going to stick with it for a quarter, or are we going to stick with it for the first half of the year? Then when would we say, well, maybe this thing has calmed down, more people want to see students back? When would we make any potential decisions to move or to alter the option?
and just bring everything, so,
Well,
Move from-
not even go complete, but, you know, say the numbers are down by the end of the first 9 weeks of the first quarter. You know, would we revisit it? I mean, is this plan for the entire year? I guess right now, the best we can say is, yes, this is planned for the entire year, but in the back of your mind, are you thinking we'll revisit quarter? We'll revisit after the first semester?
I'll be honest with you, I think we revisit it every day, because if we ever get to a situation where we can bring every student back, you know, and if we say right now it's a semester, but something happens, and they say, okay, it's October 30th, you can bring every student back, do we want to stay with this plan all the way through the end of the semester? So I think we leave it open to where we have the flexibility that Monday we were on this plan, but you know, or on Friday, but next Monday, everybody's going. So, or the opposite, we're all going virtual. So, you know, make sure that that door, whichever way it may swing, you know, we're able to walk through it.
Yeah, but we don't really have to be fluid this year, because if we have a classroom that has a case of coronavirus or whatever, the teacher is out, you know, we may have a classroom that is quarantined or whatever. So it is going to be really a fluid year. It's going to be very unique.
Chaotic.
Unique.
It's a moving target. Question for maybe Shepherd, maybe Dr. Brown. The teaching colleges at AS Road, when construction's over with, they go back. Am I correct in that assumption?
That is correct.
That's not figured in for any of our students.
It is not. So the learning cottages are there through December, which is when we anticipate construction is over. It is relatively inexpensive to rent those learning cottages, so if we need them after December, then we could keep them for relatively little expense. So, yeah. And we are working with LCW to see if we can get 3 more classrooms available at AS Roads, which would allow us to have our K through 5 at AS Roads Elementary School. So we are, you know, we're pushing without trying to rushing them, because we want them to do a great job.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just thinking of moving other students from other schools so we could have more students attend.
Yeah, so, yeah, that's an opportunity after December. I think the final completion is November the 16th, but it usually lags a little bit.
Right.
So,
Okay.
the first part of December.
Thank you very much.
So really, now, just like to have the discussion as far as the option that the board feels that we may need to look at one versus the other, because, we as a team did not want to bring an option and you guys say, we want another option. We wanted to present you with options. We wanted to present you with options because, if you're not informed, and that's why the team tonight came, because each one of them they're specialized in their area. And, it's been great working with this team. So we're all here together as a family. We're all here to make sure that we can resume school safe and make sure that we can do a quality job in educating our children. So as we move forward, I guess, this is where we need to have discussions on directions from the board. Because one thing we're doing is we're planning virtual. That is a given. Because at some point in time, as Ms. Shepherd said, we may have to shut a classroom down. We may have to shut a school down. So virtual options and opportunity to get students in. That's, we're all for that. And we want to do it again safely. So one thing I do want to point out that even if we are virtual, our teachers are going to be in the building unless that building is closed or quarantined or isolated. We expect our teachers to be in the building teaching remotely if for some reason that happens.
I have a question about the full virtual students. So 1,000 plus is a lot of students that might be doing that. Would they be participating on one of those 80 days as like a live in-person event, or are they just gonna, I don't understand exactly, would they ever be participating? I mean, at home, virtually, but through a session as that teacher is teaching that Skyline A that day.
Yes, ma'am. And that would be our goal. So our goal is that it's within that hybrid model, and that's why we have the LMS, whether it's Google Classroom or whether it's virtual Virginia at the high school level or school of the. When you look at virtual learning, the top 3 modes of learning is direct instruction, online through Zoom or some medium like that, or recorded or an app. So our goal is that the teacher has Algebra 1 at 9:30, she opens that link or he opens that link. Those students have that opportunity to come on. The lesson is presented, the lesson is recorded, and then it can be put on an LMS later, so that those students that maybe were not able to attend for some reason will have that instruction from that day. And then, of course, if they are on, and I'm not going to use the off day, that for instance, Warren County is Monday, Tuesday, so everything is virtual on Thursday and Friday for them. So it's not an off day. Those teachers are now teaching everything remotely, and we would expect our students to all come in. And so we would just need to monitor and make sure that students are progressing, making progress. For those that are getting behind, you still use your truancy officers, you still make those phone calls. If there's assignments that are missed, you still have those, you count that as absences, and chronic absenteeism. So there's a lot of things that can go on in the virtual world. But our goal is that, yes, those students would log into that teacher with that instruction, and then it would be a quick little lesson because everybody would be in the LMS. So from day one, we expect our teachers to start putting every lesson, every assignment in the LMS. So whether if I'm in the classroom or whether I'm home, that lesson is there. That also helps us prepare for if we have to shut it. So if we go back to trying to teach normal on a daily basis, and then in a month we're shut down, then that teacher saying, oh, how do I upload this? How do I do this on the LMS? You know, start day one. And so we finish that lesson. I tell my students, you can go ahead and start working on the assignment. Leave the link open. You can stop the recording, but leave the link open. And then work with your students in the classroom. Those students, they just log off and now they're submitting everything to the LMS and do it. And you can check on that. So that's where we get the blended and hybrid and it is, you know, it's doable. We've had a lot of meetings that way with teachers or groups. I know Ms. Shepherd did a calendar meeting with a group that way. She was in here with the group. There was a lot of them online. And she would interact with this group. She would go over and then interact with the group on the computer. So, you know, we have modeled that as administrators with our faculty.
Question, how many students do we have pre-K through fifth grade? Total population of those students, rough idea,
We have about 2,200
one,
pre-K through 5.
so about 2/5 of our population is pre-K through 5. I just struggle with the children being in front of that teacher at that young age, trying to learn to sound out whatever it is and all that. I don't know, but then I struggle with the older children getting 1 or 2 days a week. I don't know how we can get around, and where do we get, as a community, the biggest bang for our buck, I hate to say it,
With relation to option one. Explain to me again, on option one, why a high school student can go 1 day per week?
Again, because you're looking at the transportation.
Is it strictly transportation?
And also class size. I think the class size there is a little bit, or the physical makeup of the building, the classes are a little smaller.
What I'm wondering is, and I guess my initial preference is for option one, but I would like to leave the possibility open that if the transportation, maybe at that high school level, if those folks are going to transport, and maybe even the middle school, that, you know, Warren County A and B is on Monday and Tuesday. Could we also not have Warren County A and B on Thursday and Friday? So at least they would be there 2 days. But, I mean, that's, I would think to not talk, looking through this, I think K through 5, we need to get them back where they can do their work and that kind of thing. And our students, fortunately, have shown us very well that they can handle virtual learning and that they will work toward that. I hate to, you know, make 6 through 12 feel like they have no stake in this, but I do feel like they have shown that they can adapt and work within that. And so my preference would be option one with potentially a look at maybe bringing those high schoolers in 2 days a week as opposed to only 1 day a week. I do have a couple of questions. Mr. Hirsch, what do we intend to do for our special needs folks?
Great question, Mr. Wells.
Any of these options?
Right. Well, we have a plan. Special education services for students with disabilities, it might include increased time. It might not just be those 1 days. It's based on the IEP team. we'll have an IEP meeting for every student with a disability prior to school starting. The case managers are already building relationships and continuing relationships with their students. So according to whatever the student's needs are, we will provide services. IEP teams will review the individual student data to determine if supplementary instruction is necessary, in addition to the days they'll be live and the days that they'll be getting remotely instructed. So for instance, if a student is going to school 2 days a week for in-person instruction and getting remote instruction 2 days a week, if that's what the IEP determines is appropriate. The student might come in on Wednesdays during those deep cleaning days in a specified area for therapies, because we're not going to pull therapies out. We're not going to pull students out of therapies while they're getting in-person instruction. So maybe we'll do those therapies on Wednesdays, and we'll have remediation on different days. It all depends on what the IEP team says. So they'll go with their non-disabled peers. Students with disabilities will go with their non-disabled peers, but the IEP team will determine what additional services those students require to be supported. That might include additional remote learning, it might include additional in-person learning, and additional therapies and things like that. But it's all based on the team.
And that's where we also discussed the equity to make sure that the students with IEP or EOL, maybe those students with extra services, how can we work with that and get them in maybe more than just for 1 day? Because we agree, just because Warren County High School is empty on Monday and Tuesday, if there's a way for transportation to work for some of those students that are at risk, that need those services, then why not use transportation to bring those students to that school and be able to provide them service? So we're going to look at that and really try to make that happen as best as possible.
And just a couple of other points that a couple of parents that I've had some conversations with. I know this is, business and other things, we always talk about blowing it up and starting all over again. This might be our opportunity to do that to some extent. We're out from under the shadow of SOLs a little bit and that kind of thing. One of the things that's mentioned in the study, this could be an awesome time for older students, particularly to do some independent study projects and things like that. And then the other is the progress, I guess, the pace that, the old argument of 180 days and that seat is what qualifies you to be an expert in that class. That may not be the case. 40 class sessions may get you. I hope we will incorporate some of that. I'm not asking it to be put in the options, but I just hope. And then the final thing is to maybe have a round table or something like that once you make a decision. I know you will with a lot of different groups, but one in particular would be the child care facilities and providers here in town, so that we can work with them and because even at best with the students Wednesday, in the middle of the week, where do I get child care for Wednesday? So maybe they're able to help their staff for Wednesday or something like that. So, those are just a couple of things I'd like to roll out.
And one thing about Wednesday, I didn't mention it, but, one thing that we discussed on Wednesday with our teachers, typically as an educator, if you have some of your students working in the classroom and some at home, well, a lot of times you're not going to get questions from those students. You're going to get questions from those parents get home from work. And so if we our teachers provide office hours on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday in the evening, say 6 to 7 or 5 to 6, where they are available to those parents and to those students to assist. Then on Wednesday, they would only have 3 hours that they would need for professional learning opportunities because they are taking care of and providing those services beyond, outside of the school day. So, that is one thing that we have discussed and looked at to make sure that we are providing a good quality service to our families, because they're going to need that. You ask any teacher, that, phone calls happen at 7 o'clock at night. It's not during the school day. But, give teachers an opportunity to count that time so that will, on Wednesday, it would just be a short day for them so that we can then get everybody out of the building and then do our people.
I have a question about that. When we split up Warren County Middle School and Warren County High School, or Skyline Middle and Skyline High School, the other day A and day B in each school, relative to whether you're in middle school or high school, is the reason we had to split it simply because of spacing, or was it our transportation? In other words, could Warren County Middle School and Skyline Middle School both go 2 days a week if we had more buses, or is the schools just don't have the size to have the social distance?
Well, and also staff, because if you may have the extra room, but when you look at putting a class of 20 algebra students, now you have to break that out to 2 classrooms. So you only have that one algebra 1 teacher. So now, who are you going to have teach that second algebra? And that's all just one class.
Right.
So now, you have a staff issue. You may have the space, but your space within the classroom causes you to split out into more classrooms.
Okay, kind of goes back to what I was asking. Just for example, with Warren County High School paying that's only money. Is there a reason if we had transportation that could not do, say, Monday, Thursday, and the B-day for Warren County High School could do Tuesday, Friday, and be there 2 days, because it would be the same group, kind of like we did at the hospital for quite some time. We had A team and B team, and neither team was there at the same time, so we didn't cross-contaminate one another. Because I would this, I know it's transportation and space and staff.
Yeah, because then you still have that other half of Skyline that you're transporting that day as well. So, you're again increasing transportation. But, is the space there? The space is there. Are the teachers there? The teachers will be there. But again, you're looking at transportation to make sure that you can stay within the confines of our budget that we budgeted for transportation to ensure that we don't get past that.
Mr. Wells, if I may, transportation scenarios, see, I think our staff, they did an amazing job. You're seeing 3 probably ran 30 plus. We ran as great as 5 or 6 years. We started that probably 12 years ago. To get to the level where you're speaking of, we were at basically a 4-year system, I believe it was. But we then talked about our budget constraints and staying within our budget. To effectively pull that off, we were looking at basically taking every single transportation employee, and that 4.5-hour contract was going to increase double. So, minimal, your fuel nearly double, your staffing double. It became what I didn't regard as economically viable option.
And I'm fine with that. One of the things, maybe moving forward, possibility to find out that half of those students, including the transport, have to be a self-transportation or parental transportation, and that becomes a steady enough thing, so maybe increase it a little bit.
Yes, sir, and I agree 100%. We do not want to close the door on any opportunity to get a student back in class. So, if we start day 1 and we find that, hey, we're actually running 30 routes instead of 34 or 37 route, then where can we push those resources to make sure that we can get more kids? You know, and I would say, okay, let's start with our middle school students, and since we are pre-K through, working on pre-K through 5, and now we'll start with our 6th grade, we'll start with our 7th grade, and just as we work our way up, we have to take, I feel it's important to take care of our kids.
I agree with that. And also, Ms. Shepherd, when you use the word fluid, I could not agree with you anymore. And that everything that's gonna happen this year is gonna be fluid. It's gonna change daily, from whether it's coming from the government, DVOE, the health department, CDC. So I appreciate, and I will kind of brag on Mr. Hirsch and Mr. Smith. I walked in the school board office yesterday evening, and that conference room table, it wasn't a tree alive in one county. They had stacks of paper that they were going through, and their hair was all a mess. But they were trying to get this thing put together, and that's the dedication that it's gonna take. And it's gonna be tough on everybody that's in our school system this entire year to make sure our children, our community is educated. And I appreciate that. I know it hasn't been easy, and I don't think it's gonna get any easier this year. Hopefully, it does, but the bottom line is we have to take care of the students and our staff. And that's the biggest thing. And I don't know exactly how we'll get there, but I have faith in this group that you guys will help us get there. And I do greatly appreciate that. So, thank you.
The other thing, just, I don't know what I'm preaching about, but the other thing about option one does give us an opportunity to address some of the staff needs who they feel like they should be in class right now, and that type of thing. It gives them some opportunities to do virtual and do some other things, studies, things like that, maybe. I was there for you. I mean, everybody in here, I'm sure, has spent more than a couple of nights burning midnight oil, as they say. And it reminded me of what the CEO once said. Somebody asked him after the meeting what he's going to do in a bad business situation. He said, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I know who I'm going to do it with. That's all it is. And that's the situation here. I totally faith in everybody. They're putting the need to the students, the staff, and everybody first.
I have a couple of questions then.
Okay.
You mentioned that all of our teachers are going to be in the schools. Is that correct?
That would be our goal, yes.
And the teachers that are at high risk or
Then
have
they-
comorbidity, would they still have to come to school to be teaching virtually if we decide that we would put them in a virtual teaching position?
We would handle those on a case-by-case basis through Mr. Smith.
Okay, because I know I've been contacted via email and phone call by a number of teachers that have concerns about coming back to school right now. I just want to make sure they feel comfortable and safe. Mr. Hirsch, some of our therapies, well, probably not many, I know you have to be right there for occupational physical therapy. Speech therapy, can that be done virtually for some students? Or?
Yes, Ms. Bowers.
Okay.
We have the opportunity to do telehealth if we need to.
You need to, okay. I haven't slept for the past few nights just thinking about all of this and how it's going to happen. I absolutely agree that at least K through 3, most likely K through 5, they need to be in the classroom every day. They need the socialization, they need the instruction. You can't teach reading virtually. They need the safety for many of our students. It's the safest place they can be is school. And they need the 2 meals that we offer. I worry about our students that aren't going to be there 5 days a week. Are we going to need to address getting meals to them? Because I know so many of our students do depend on that.
But when I get
So we're working on that, Ms. Bauer. We're working on figuring out how we're going to be able to feed our kids when all the days they're not at school.
Yeah, I would love to see all of our students, for equity reasons, in school every day. But right now, I don't see how that's going to happen, so I hope that's an option. Not everyone's going to be fine. So a lot of parents are out there, and they're ready for their kids to be back in school, and others don't feel comfortable with it, so being able to accommodate them. That's
I feel like option one is a little popular, but, option two, I just keep looking at it and thinking, you know, is it worth to give that extra 2 days for 6 through 8? How close are we to being able to get the fifth graders, basically have option one, but be able to do that 6 through 8, 2 days a week? Is it just transportation that's limiting the fifth graders to the 2 days in option two, or is it space? I know we're not the same two.
Well, it's still, again, transportation and space, because we're wanting to utilize, those classrooms within the middle school for some of our fifth graders, to get them in there. So then, once you start bringing extra students in, then you need the space within those buildings, and then the staff to make sure that you have the students, somebody with the students in the classroom.
I mean, you get 3 whole classes of students that get an extra day face to face.
So lots of documents.
It is.
I like one, but two, I think that's backwards.
Are you make a decision this evening, or are we going to?
No, we were just kind
I'm
of,
sure we're going to.
and our goal, I mean, we have to have an approval on the, I believe it's August 5th, the first one, August 5th, got that. Right. Anyway, August 5th, so, that's when we have to do our final approval. The reason we brought you options today, so that you can kind of tell us, yes, I like this one, I kind of like this one, let's work on these a little more, but you know what? Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that one. So, because we need to plan, and we want to make sure that you guys are aware of which direction we're going, because you have the final say in the plan that we put forward. And so, you know, you work with your community members on a daily basis, and so do we. So we want to make sure that you guys help us in directing which plan you feel more comfortable with, or which plan, because we need to move in that direction.
Well, I think now that this information is out, we're going to be hearing a lot from the community about parents and students, and I think we need to take that into consideration also.
Now, one thing, if you would like, we could, you know, throw this up as a survey, to parents within the community, and see which option that they would prefer. You know, that would also include teachers. I mean, we could do a lot of different things that we have discussed, but
Time's a factor.
time is a factor. You know, we're moving towards the 1st of August, and there's still a lot of planning that has to go on, or that needs to occur. And so if we do not, you know, the further we push this off, the more difficult it is to make sure we can get all of our ducks in a row.
When is day one?
Currently, day one is August the 11th. August the 11th.
Is that subject to change?
We're going to talk about
We're
that
going to talk
next.
about that.
Okay.
But that is the current date.
So that hasn't changed?
Not yet.
We're going to talk about it.
No, I mean, it was August 11th a month ago. Yeah, okay.
So option 1 and 2, kind of what you guys were looking at, or by like 3 and 4? But I don't know if we could get, if 1 and 2 were the options that everybody kind of thought maybe we could make it work, we can send it back, and let Dr. Bowser and his group work on it a little more, maybe refine it, to give us maybe more of those we can buy. To try to get more students we can get in the school, better we are, I think, personally.
I think but also that we need students there every day.
I agree.
Everybody.
Yeah, everybody. So, I don't know, and if you want, I mean, we can definitely put that out, you know, these options out there. We can get it, get feedback. Can't promise we can do any of it, but we can get answers for our opinion, or what people think. So, I guess Dr. Bowser from the nods, if you put a survey together for us, if you can. Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Anything else we can back there? Moving on, comprehensive instructional program for school calendar, Ms. Shepherd.
So we are doing what Dr. Green earlier said we shouldn't do, and that's hand out documents. So as you heard over the last couple of hours, that we are thinking about changing the way we do business in school and changing the way that our teachers teach in their instructional processes. So the first part of July, our calendar committee got together. Some were virtual, some were in person, and the calendar committee is comprised of at least one person from each school, at least one teacher from each school, and then sometimes a school administrator or whatever. But what we looked at when we looked at the new calendar, looked at revising the calendar, we looked at what are we going to need to do for this school year in order to open and have the best instructional processes available for our students, because we're going to be teaching a little differently. So the very first page has a draft calendar that we're going to work our way through. And then the second page is our current approved calendar so that you can compare the two. But, so what we did is we moved, what the calendar committee is recommending is that we move the new teacher instruction to, new teachers come and be oriented to Warren County Public Schools that first week in August. And then they would have a 2-day break, and then all teachers would return. So they would return on August the 12th. And if you notice there are 11 professional days altogether. So what we did is we took most of the professional days out of the entire school year, and we front-loaded them so that we would have an opportunity to give our teachers the professional development that they need in order to be successful this school year. So those first 3 days, the 12th, the 13th, the 14th, we talked about a new learning management system earlier today. Those 3 days will be used possibly to teach our teachers our new learning management system, our new LMS. The 17th through the 21st, we would again be offering professional development tips and tricks on doing virtual learning, or how to best manage your virtual learning or your students, or create relationships with students virtually. So those would be the things that we would target for those first 8 days of professional development. And then those next 3 days, the 24th through the 26th, we would, those would be our parent training opportunities and our back to school events. So that's when our schools will bring their parents in and talk about and show them how to use the technology that we're going to be using for the school year. Because in each one of the scenarios that was presented, there was a virtual or a remote learning day. So, that would be the opportunity for us to meet with parents, our teachers to meet with parents, to talk about and to show how to access the information that they will need for their child. So that would be back to school events and family training events. So then we would start school on August the 27th, and I'll put on my glasses, I hope they do not steam up. We would start school on August the 27th, and then we would have Labor Day would be our first holiday, and then our first semester would end October 29th. We would have a professional day on November the 3rd, I believe that's election day. And then we added a holiday on November the 11th because that is a long stretch of time and to go through the whole month of October without a break. So, having a built-in break there in November for our teachers would be great. And then, that actually falls on a Wednesday, which is Students' Virtual Day. And then we have the Thanksgiving holiday, which remained the same, and then we have the winter break, which remained the same. And then we have the holiday on January the 18th remained the same, but we added the holiday on February the 15th. That is a federal holiday that a lot of our federal employees get off, and they have always requested that we take that off. So it was a professional day previously, now we're recommending that it is a holiday. And then the rest of the holidays remain the same. We left Apple Blossom Friday as a professional day, because that's a lot of the times that's a day that we have high absenteeism for both our students and our staff. And then the end of the school year changed by 2 days, so we would be going until June 8th. You will notice that there are no weather days built into this calendar because our weather days would be virtual learning days or remote learning days. So that's, we have 180 days built into the school calendar, and be happy to answer any questions or if you have any concerns about, but I think pushing school back will allow us a little more time to get prepared for the new school year, and then it will give us an opportunity that our teachers will be well informed and well prepared to deliver the instruction that they need to deliver. So be happy to answer any questions.
I think it looks good.
Yeah.
I like the reason.
I like the extra training on the front end because that's really where you're going to need it with all this shifting around and virtual and all that. Some of those teachers will pick it up quick, some of them will be a little slow to pick it up. Gives the coach time to get in there too, the technical coach. So I like this pretty much.
I think it's a win, the way you get everybody back in school as far as the teachers and staff. At the very beginning, we start 16 days later, we're trying to go 2 days later at the end of the year because of the virtual, the snow days. I think that's a big win for everybody. It's like everything else is pretty much the same. I think it's a win.
Do we need to approve this tonight?
So, I would like for you to approve it tonight, but if you want to set on it for until August 5th, that really only leaves, was it 6 days until school was supposed to start? So I would feel, comfortable if you don't approve it, but if you're comfortable.
Do I hear a motion,
that would be
Ms.
great.
Fowler?
I move that we approve the new presented calendar.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, so carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Last but not least, Dr. Collins. Public instruction. Yeah.
So a little background on the comprehensive instructional program. There's a consortium of public school divisions in Virginia working collaboratively to improve student achievement as measured by Virginia standards of learning assessment. The CIP is designed to help instructors by providing activities and assessments that are highly aligned to Virginia's curriculum framework in content and rigor. These resources have been submitted by teachers who have demonstrated superior performance as evidenced by their student scores on Virginia's SOL assessments. The CIP also analyzes data across the consortium to identify successful schools and divisions and share their practices with the other consortium members. The consortium consists of school divisions in Region 7, Region 8, as well as individual school divisions such as Buttermont, Allegheny, Nelson, Page, Shenandoah, Essex, King, Queen, Waynesboro City, Davidville, Colonial Heights, just to name a few. So when we look at CIP, it's a program that, again, started in Region 7 because Region 7 is a system that when you look at demographically, their demographics tell them that it says that Region 7 should not be successful. But they are. And when you look, we have students with disabilities, 15%, 55% economically disadvantaged, your poverty rate of 22%, and then your minority of 8%. The reason, and I'll start off, reason why Region 7 and Region 8 were highlighted, because Region 8, this last year was their first full year to be a part of this as an entire region. Of course, there were no SOL results because tests were taken away, so the data is based off of 2018 data, some 2019 data, because you have no 2020 data. So when you look at Warren County and our demographics, we have 13% students with disabilities, 41% or 42% economically disadvantaged, 12% poverty, and 22% minority. And when you look at per pupil funding, again, Region 7 was one of the lowest funded superintendent regions in the Commonwealth. And Warren County, when we looked at our data for 2018, it was right there, 10,625. Math performance. So when you look at, even though they have all of these things going for them, the funding was, typical, the high poverty rate for economically disadvantaged within the community area. But when you look at the math performance, they were first in every category, grade 3 through geometry minus your algebra 1. So that means as a region, all of those schools performed very well when it came to the math SOLs. And then when you look at what Region 7 was able to do compared to the other regions, of course, Region 4 is right here. We're right there with them. But still, when you look at all total pass rates in math, Region 7 with all of these, all this criteria that said you should not be successful, they were successful. And then when you look at your reading performance, again, grade 3 through 8, or grade 3 through 7, that region, all of those schools combined were ranked 1 across the Commonwealth. And then when you look at the comparison, you can see 81% in 2019, 82% in 2018. Everybody took a little bit of a drop because of some changes. But the region that had started with this program in 2014, 2015, they did not see as big a drop as other school divisions across the Commonwealth. When you look at our students with disabilities, again, 53% in 2019. Again, leading all other superintendent school regions across the Commonwealth. Overall performance in 2019, 2018. So for the the Region 7 schools are in the top 10. And 10 are in the top 25 across the continent. So the program that they're doing and that they have built that can be pushed out to other school divisions is working. It's a program that really helps students, that provides support to the teachers, and it's really a benefit to allow school divisions to be able to be accredited maybe in areas that they struggle. So when we look at Warren County and all of the SOLs over the past, from 2006 to 2019, and you can see the state rank here, you know, we dropped, we were doing good. We were increasing, and then in 2013, we started heading back south again, and it dropped from 55th down to 98th. And so this is one of the reasons that we want to look at bringing this program in to help us as we move forward, because school accreditation is what tells us if we're successful or not. And yes, we want a well-rounded education for our students, but bringing in a program that can help us to ensure that, you know, we're doing the right thing within our community and our schools are accredited, it provides a lot of tools as we move forward in developing our plan. So when you look at the 2019 SOL versus the poverty, and that is, you know, that's your students that receive SNAP, that's poverty rate, that poverty rate that is taken from the federal government, that is from every school in the Commonwealth. So when you look at the poverty rate of some of these schools that are doing really well, and this is the way this chart works: low poverty to high poverty, low to high performance. So we should expect to see all of our students in school divisions where there's hardly any poverty rate, all be up here scoring well. But what most data tells us and what most of the I guess research tells us is that if you're down here, it's hard to get up there, but you can do it. So you can look at what some of these schools within Region 7 has been able to do, utilizing this program and the resources and the collaboration as they go through and work each year and obtain accreditation, but also score and make sure that those SOLs are where they need to be. So when we look at CIP, what can it do for us? Well, one, it will allow us to provide resources for teachers. As we move into this next year, we have to have some sort of assessments to assess learning that was lost. They're already created, you don't have to buy anything new. Some of those programs can be very expensive when going in and looking at purchasing assessments and suites. These are developed by teachers in Virginia that have had success on SOLs. So it provides us with benchmarks, provides us with pacing guides, it helps with aligning lessons. We have the pre-test evaluations. So we're able to, from day one, give that student, and what they have created are mock SOLs. So those students can go in and take a mock SOL, and we will have that data on and allow us to be directed on how to improve that student's play. And then when we look at redefining roles, so now we can take some of our central office staff that are creating the benchmarks and spending a lot of time creating them. Now we can take them and work and push them out to provide quality professional development to our teachers that is based within their field of study, whether it's English or math. So we're able to bring them and give hands-on training and support for our teachers in the field. And I've already mentioned about classroom support, and, so, do you have any questions about the CIP program?
The cost. That's no. What grade levels?
They have assessments even as low as kindergarten, but it's really for all of your SOL testing subject areas. So the the program starts at grade 3. Although they do have the benchmarks K, 1, 2, but then really look at all of your SOL tested areas, all the way up from through 12th grade.
Ms. Brown? I said, you approve?
I think it's one shot.
And we can do benchmarks, K through second. And then
What's-
SOL testing.
What CIP does not have, then we'll continue to provide that through the instructional resource team. But for most grade levels and all SOL tested grade levels and courses, there are benchmarks and pacing guides. And another piece that is taken, a load that is taken off of the instructional resource team is the data disaggregation piece. So it is Dr. Hurd, the CIP coordinator, I don't know what his title is. He takes all of our benchmark data through Performance Matters, which we already have, and disaggregates that down to the grade level, school, course, teacher level. So that'll be a huge piece of data disaggregation that we won't have to do, at least during benchmark time.
So how long does it take for we to see that it's effective?
I think that depends on how quickly we're able to, we'll be able to put it in the hands of teachers quickly, but the pacing guides, we haven't gotten to see the pacing guides yet. So we'll want to look at the pacing guides to see how closely correlated they are to our existing pacing guides, because that'll be the curveball for teachers. So the pacing is significantly different. I don't really think it's going to be, but if it is significantly different, then that'll be some adjustment in planning that teachers will have to do. But teachers are going to have to do so much adjustment in planning this year because things are going to look so different. I believe that they will adjust well.
Anyone else?
The Warren County Schools Board Comprehensive Instructional Program, CIP, $10,744 for 2020-2021 school year.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Okay, upon completion of today's business, this meeting is adjourned.